Ever wonder why making a real, lasting change is just so hard? Whether it's a new diet, trying to build a new habit, or kicking off a big project at work. We all start with these amazing intentions, right? But then, somehow, we find ourselves right back where we started. Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down right here, why that happens, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it.
It's a feeling we all know, isn't it? That New Year's resolution that just kind of fizzles out by February, or that brilliant new strategy at work that never really gets off the ground. The ideas we're digging into today, from the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, give us a powerful way to understand this exact problem. So the secret to understanding this whole mess is a really simple but brilliant metaphor. I want you to think of your brain as having two sides. First, there's the rider. That's your rational, planning, logical side. The rider holds the reins, looks ahead, and seems to be in charge. But the rider is sitting on top of an elephant. And the elephant is our emotional, impulsive, gut-feeling side. Now, if the rider and the 6-ton elephant disagree on which way to go, who do you think is going to win that fight? Yeah, you guessed it. The elephant wins every single time. And they're both traveling on what's called the path, which is just the situation or environment around them. So here's the big takeaway, the absolute key. For any change to actually stick, you have to get all three of those parts working together. You have to direct the rider, motivate the elephant, and shape the path. Let's dive into how to actually do that, one piece at a time. First up, let's talk about the rider. This is our analytical mind, right? The part of you that makes pro-con lists and thinks things through. But the rider has a huge weakness. It loves to overthink things. And when you give it too many options or a fuzzy goal, it just gets stuck, spinning its wheels. Analysis paralysis. So how do you get the rider unstuck? You have to give it crystal clear, unambiguous directions. And to do that, we've got 3 amazing strategies. First, find the bright spots. Second, script the critical moves. And third, point to the destination. Okay, so instead of getting bogged down in all the problems, the first strategy is to look for what's already working. These are the bright spots. Here's a great example. Back in 1990, a guy named Jerry Sternin was tasked with fighting malnutrition in Vietnam. He didn't spend months analyzing the causes of poverty, nope. Instead, he went looking for the few very poor kids in the village who were healthy, and he just studied what their moms were doing differently. And get this, the results were absolutely staggering. By simply having everyone copy those bright spot behaviors, like feeding their kids smaller meals more often, child nutrition improved for 65% of the village's kids. And it only took 6 months. He didn't solve poverty. He just cloned what was already working. And this quote right here just nails the writer's other big problem. What looks like someone being stubborn or lazy is often just confusion. If you give the writer a vague goal like, I'm going to be healthier, its brain just freezes, overwhelmed by the hundreds of choices it could make. So how do you beat that paralysis? You script the critical moves. When researchers wanted people in West Virginia to eat healthier, they didn't give them a lecture. They gave them one simple scripted move. Next time you're at the store, just buy 1% milk instead of whole milk. That one tiny, super clear instruction doubled the market share of low-fat milk. No room for confusion, no paralysis. All right, so we've got the rider all sorted out with a clear map, but that's only half the battle, not even. All that logic and planning is completely useless if that 6-ton elephant doesn't want to budge. To make real change happen, you can't just analyze the problem. You have to hit them right in the gut. You've got to make people feel something. Okay, check out this story. It's a perfect example. A manager named John Stegner was trying to convince his company's executives that their spending on supplies was out of control. Now, he knew a spreadsheet wasn't going to cut it. So instead, he found and collected every single one of the 424 different types of work gloves the company was buying from different factories. He piled them high on the boardroom table and just let them stare. The visual, emotional shock of that ridiculous, wasteful pile did what no PowerPoint chart ever could. It made them feel the problem. So, getting that big old elephant to move isn't just a one-shot deal. It's really about 3 things. Finding that emotional hook, making the change feel way less scary, and building a mindset that can actually handle a few bumps in the road. The elephant gets scared really easily. When it sees a huge, intimidating goal, it feels like you're asking it to climb Mount Everest. And what does it do? It digs in its heels and refuses to move. So the trick is to shrink the change, chop it up into tiny, almost ridiculously small wins that build momentum and make the elephant feel like, hey, I can do this. Oh, this is one of my favorite examples.
Researchers gave people car wash loyalty cards. One group got a card that needed 8 stamps to get a free wash. The other group got a 10-stamp card, but, and here's the clever part, it came with 2 stamps already filled in. Now, both groups needed to buy 8 more car washes, right? The work was identical. But the crazy part, the group that felt like they had a head start was almost twice as likely to finish the card. That feeling of progress is pure fuel for the elephant. And last, for the elephant, you have to prepare for the inevitable, stumbling. This is all about having a growth mindset. If you can reframe failure not as proof that you're no good, but as just tuition, the price of learning something new, then your elephant is way more likely to get back up after it falls and try again. Okay, on to our third and final piece. And honestly, this might be the biggest game changer of all. Because sometimes the problem isn't the writer's plan or the elephant's motivation. Sometimes the problem is just the path they're on. The secret is to shape the environment to make the right choice the easy choice. This quote points to a huge blind spot we all have. It's called the fundamental attribution error. Basically, when we see someone screw up, our first instinct is to blame their character. We think, oh, they're lazy or they're just not committed. We blame the person, not realizing that often the situation is the real villain. There's this incredible study that shows this in action. Researchers identified students they thought were naturally charitable, the saints, and those who weren't, the jerks. When they sent both groups a vague letter asking for food donations, pretty much nobody, saint or jerk, donated. But when they got a letter with a map to the donation bin and super simple instructions, a full quarter of the so-called jerks donated. The path was more important than their personality. How wild is that? But if you want the most powerful, jaw-dropping example of shaping the path, look no further than this. During the Vietnam War, a shocking 20% of U.S. soldiers there developed an addiction to heroin. People back home were terrified of what would happen when they all came back. But here's the stunner. A year after returning to the U.S., only 1% were still addicted. Why? They didn't all suddenly develop superhuman willpower. No, they just changed their path. The stressful environment that triggered and supported the habit was gone, and for most of them, the habit just broke. All right, let's zoom out and pull this all together. If you want to make hard changes actually happen, you can't just rely on willpower or logic. You need a complete system. It really boils down to this simple, powerful framework. For your writer, your rational brain, you have to provide crystal clear direction. For your elephant, your emotional side, you have to find the feeling, the motivation. And for the path, you just have to tweak the situation to make the journey as easy as possible. When you get all 3 of those things aligned, even the toughest changes start to look possible. So that's the framework. And I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think about one change, just one thing you really want to make happen in your life or at work. Now, instead of just trying to muscle through it with willpower, ask yourself, how can you use this? How can you direct your writer, motivate your elephant, and shape your path to make that change feel, well, almost easy?